Ouroboros, the ancient Egyptian turned ancient Greek symbol of a serpentine dragon eating its own tail. It has become a symbol of many things in many cultures for many reasons, from the ancient Egyptians as a symbol of the seasons, to alchemy as a Western equivalent of the yin and yang symbols of Taoism, to the never-ending cycle of life, death, creation, and destruction, many others as well. To think that such a symbol would have so much history is a tale that any graphic designer would gush over. This video has absolutely nothing to do with any of that. Because the PC crew doesn't know how to write a half-decent segue, instead, we're talking about the genetically enhanced Matrix plagiarist who has stabbed more backs than Mr. Paladin on 37.5 cans of Monster. The man who had adopted the name of the ancient symbol as part of his evil plan involving horrific viruses and the most heinous plague of all, memes.
Hello, ladies. Look at your man. Now back to me. Now back at your man. Now back to me. Sadly, he isn't me. But if he stopped relying on imperfect human DNA and injected himself with Ouroboros, he could kill like me.
Hi, I'm Tino Krevons, and welcome to How Strong Is. In this episode, we're talking about Albert Wesker.
Wait. How did you get in here?
The door was open?
Oh.
Also, I found the key.
What?
Well, not so much found, as it was literally lying in front of the door with nothing to cover it.
Yeah, okay. I have to go violently scream at the security of this place.
So, anyway, Albert Wesker's life began as a mere, simple little lab experiment for the Umbrella Corporation, aka Evil Sci-Fi Corporation number 3572. He, along with hundreds of other children, were gathered by Umbrella's founder for Project W, a science experiment made to create a race of superhumans that would rule the world, with Umbrella's founder being their supreme overlord. Only 13 children survived, and Albert Wesker was one of them. Wesker showed promise amongst the many children that were tested on, to the point that he became a researcher for Umbrella themselves at just 17 years old. Wesker also played a role in taking the Ebola virus and turning it into the much more deadly and much more effective T-virus, which would be used in creating the monstrous being known as Tyrant. However, Wesker's true plans started to come about in 1996, when he became a double agent in the Raccoon City Police Department's Special Tactics and Rescue Squad, also known as STARS, home to some of Raccoon City's finest officers and worst voice actors.
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
This house is dangerous. There are terrible demons. Ouch!
That's what I was going to say.
It's me, Chris.
Is that you, Rebecca?
It's coming! Jill! Kill that monster! You're our Amazon, Jill!
Not that Wesker himself was immune to this.
Stop it! Don't open that door!
I lost track of her while we were scouting around. I hope she's okay.
Umbrella? Well, I intimidated him, but it had nothing to do with Umbrella. I just used him for my personal purposes.
Oh, early voice acting in video games. We've come a long way from then. We'll save that for whenever Star voices someone.
Oh, do so completely shut up.
So, a few years after joining STARS, Wesker and the rest of STARS' Alpha team, consisting of Jill Valentine, Chris Redfield, and Barry Burton, were sent into a mansion in the Arklay Mountains, which was also the laboratory where Wesker had been working on the T-virus. And from there, Wesker basically led the group into a death trap, even unleashing Tyrant on the group. This was merely the beginning of his mind-numbingly complicated evil plan. And that's just the first game. But enough about story. Let's get into some stuff involving Wesker's feats. Being genetically modified with the progenitor virus, Albert's physical capabilities are far greater than the average human. Even humans well above the average, such as Chris Redfield, can barely even manage to hit him, let alone take him down. Wesker may not get involved in combat unless he needs to. But that doesn't mean he can't wipe the floor with you. In fact, there are plenty of feats for the man with a million sunglasses. First things first, let's talk about his strength. Let's begin with some stuff Wesker has done on his own and without needing to worry about scaling. First, let's start with him punching a hole into some guy's chest. But not just any guy. We're talking about Oliver Spencer, aka Umbrella's founder, and pretty much the reason why Wesker is how he is now, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Granted, by this point, Spencer was really old and was confined to a wheelchair and was not genetically modified, but the fact is, It still takes quite a lot to break through a human skin, muscle tissue, bones, organs, and anything else in the way. So it's still quite impressive. It's still wall level, all things considered, but it's still far beyond that of the average human. He's also able to punch through solid metal with his bare hand while being severely weakened, pick up a missile with one hand like it was made of paper, dislodge and throw a metal grate with one hand, and send Chris flying through a metal door, knocking it off its hinges with a single kick.
Your future hinges upon this fight.
Complete with terrible puns! And speaking of Chris, Wesker has mopped the floor with this guy so many times he'd be a stand-in for SpongeBob. Many, many times Wesker has sent Chris flying across the room, be it a simple throw, an elbow, or a kick.
Your future hinges.
Don't you dare! Now, it's safe to say that Wesker scales to Chris, Sheva, Jill, and anyone else who has fought him in one-on-one combat. With that being said, let's take a quick look at what Wesker quite blatantly scales to. More specifically, one infamous feat from Chris. Yes! The PC crew is really going to get that feat out of the way as soon as possible. It's stupid, it's funny, it's awesome, all in one package. Now you may be thinking, such a feat is an outlier. Surely the stone must be way too heavy and no non-augmented human has that kind of strength. But consider where this whole thing takes place in, a volcano. One of the most common types of stone found within volcanoes is known as pumice, which is a very lightweight stone. True, it may also be made of granite or continental crust, but considering where they are and the limitations Chris obviously has, I'd say pumice is a good bet without it being a damn outlier. So let me just fetch this cheat sheet the PC crew did and... Oh, geez. Huh. A lot of big numbers. Well, here goes nothing. First, pumice has a mass of 0.25 grams per cubic centimeter. So, let's measure the size of this boulder. According to Resident Evil 5, the game in which this takes place, Chris is 6 feet 1 inches tall, or 73 inches tall. By doing some pixel measurements as well as comparing Chris's height to the height of the boulder in some angles, and using the volume of a sphere as the closest shape this boulder resembles, it's a safe estimate that the boulder has a radius of about 72 inches, or 6 feet. Why radius? Well, in order to find the volume of a sphere, we have to use the sphere's radius instead of its circumference or diameter. So, 6 foot radius it is. The volume of a sphere is V equals 4 over 3 pi r cubed, with r being the radius. Doing the math puts this thing at a volume of 904.78 cubic feet, or 25.6205165 cubic meters, or, get ready for this one, 256,205.16.5 cubic centimeters. Multiply that by 0.25 per cubic meter for the mass of pumice, and we get a total weight of 6,405,129.125 grams, or 14,120.8925 pounds, or 7.05 tons. And that's in its most likely makeup. If the boulder was made of granite, one of the most common types of stone, that would make it 2.75 grams per cubic meter, giving it a total mass of 7,456,420.375 grams, or 155,329.82 pounds, or 77.66 tons. And if it's continental crust, which is possible since volcanoes are formed from two tectonic plates ramming into each other, then that's a mass of 2.7 grams per cubic centimeter. So really it would be weaker than the granite, but that's still a weight of 69,175,394.55 grams, or 152,505.64 pounds, or 76.25 tons. Slightly lower than granite, but still. The PC crew actually had extreme difficulty trying to figure this feat out, mainly what it's made of and how big it is, hence why they are guesstimations. Oh god, I f***ing hate that word. Here's the end result of the crew members after finally figuring this thing out.
I've had more fun picking cactus spines out of my...
Considering how much heavier the last two are compared with how much more realistic Pumice would be in terms of numbers and geology, I'd personally go with that and put Chris's strength at class 10. So of course Wesker scales to it as he's manhandled Chris repeatedly. Also, this is not the only time Resident Evil characters have done feats similar to this. Yes, it's super strong, yes, it's way beyond human, but at least it's somewhat consistent. You can call it an outlier if you want, but Wesker in all likelihood is still class 10 in base form with or without scaling. Now for speed. This stat is where Wesker excels. God-awful puns aside, Wesker is every bit as hard to actually hit as he is to take down. He is able to effortlessly dodge gunfire at point-blank range to the point where it looks like he's teleporting, or rather, plagiarizing Nightcrawler from X-Men with that weird black smoke he leaves behind. The average speed of a bullet depends wildly depending on what's shooting it, but the overall determined average is 1,126 feet per second, or 768 miles per hour, which is the speed of sound. With him being able to dodge these with very little hassle easily puts him at hypersonic in speed. He can also catch rockets, and even while weakened, can also jump to great heights, taking off at great speeds, looking less like a supervillain, and more like a shoddily animated Garry's Mod project.
Hey, screw you two!
Also... that.
Excuse me!
Yeah, what's up?
Are you seriously going to try and use Marvel vs. Capcom 3 stuff for this guy?
I take it I shouldn't?
No! MVC3, or any game like it, is a non-canon, alternate universe, crossover fighting game where consistency is dead and game mechanics are all over the damn place. You don't use these kind of games for a character's attempt at a versus debater's page, not even when compositing.
You've had bad experiences with those kinds of comments, haven't you?
Take a look at our HSI Jedadoma video, and take a shot every time someone out there tries to claim that what we said was utterly wrong because, my Dante, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, he lost to Dante, what you say is wrong, it's totally legit, the game is... Shut the flying
Okay, moving on from that, don't worry, we have emergency tranquilizers just for this kind of scenario, apparently.
No, you don't. You just gave me $10 to piss off.
He's talking in his sleep. Anyway, let's move on to Wesker's durability. There's not much here in terms of feats that isn't much better than his strength, but some of his non-Chris stopping durability feats include tanking a rocket explosion to the face point blank, the same type of rockets that he is able to catch, by the way, tanking getting stabbed in the arm by a knife with his leather jacket being his only armor, having at least 14 steel I-beams fall on him at one time, and tanking getting shot in the face twice before falling out of a plane. Feats involving stopping Chris include Wesker blocking a metal pipe swung by Chris using just his wrist, and also stopping Chris running full charge to try and seemingly tackle Wesker, only for him to get thoroughly and rightfully shit-canned. In addition to having superhuman durability, he also has a healing factor. Yes, Wesker, like many other fictional characters before him, has a healing factor that makes him more dangerous when attacks manage to overcome his natural durability.
Please note, this is the purpose of healing factors. They are not a part of their durability. It's to help against attacks that do harm them and overcome their durability. You wanking fools.
This is due to the experimentation done to him when he was just a child. Wesker was injected with something known as a progenitor virus, though he has done other experiments on himself to further boost his power, but not nearly to the same extent. Except for one, but we'll talk about that later. Hint, hint. These have helped to give him most of his superhuman abilities and his healing factor. It also gave him immunity to most, if not all, viruses and diseases, which is why he's perfectly okay with creating hordes of zombies and commanding them. This healing factor is what allowed him to survive being stabbed by the Tyrant, a giant bioorganic weapon, or BOW, while also making him look to be killed by it. He's also immortal, but in the doesn't age sense, rather than the nothing can kill me sense, contrary to what this arrogant social Darwinist wants to think. Now, when it comes to intelligence, Wesker is one of the smartest characters in the series. For one, he's a master manipulator. He was easily able to outsmart the entire STARS team until it was time for Tyrant to be revealed. In fact, he's outsmarted almost everyone in the series with the exception of Ada Wong. But he's also an actual intellectual genius. He's a master in the likes of biochemistry, psychology, and physics, and became a researcher at Umbrella at just 17 years old. You know what I did at 17? Preparing for the lifelong journey of ad-libbing what I did at 17 in a video that I co-starred on. On top of that, he was also able to outsmart the Red Queen, a supercomputer created by some of the lead programmers at Umbrella. I think it's safe to say that Wesker is just as dangerous mentally as he is physically.
I'm Wesker, I'm doing a smart thing.
I think I'm getting pretty good at this Wesker impression, guys. What do you think? Now, despite what you might think, Wesker doesn't always fight unarmed. One of his weapons he uses is the Samurai Edge pistol. This pistol is a modified version of the Beretta 92F. It can hold up to 15 bullets and has an attached laser on it for better aiming. It's pretty much the only gun he ever uses. As for why he uses it, it's simply used as a symbol to Chris about how he betrayed the STARS team all those years ago. You know, Albert, there are other ways to be petty besides that.
Oh, I can only hope to achieve that level of pettiness someday.
Oh, I'm pretty sure you'll get there. He also is seen wearing a pair of sunglasses. It seems like he has an unlimited number of them, and he never seems to take them off except for when he gets really serious about a fight. Unfortunately, these also cause him to not be able to see in the dark, which is part of the reason that they were able to fire a rocket at him in the first place without him seeing. You'd think that with all this cool stuff the mutations gave him, that night vision would be on that list. But easily his most powerful weapon he's ever used is against our heroes in the field of what he excels at, biological warfare. Wesker becoming one with the Ouroboros virus, a more powerful version of the progenitor virus that was created by Wesker himself in combination with antibodies meant to fight off the T-virus, which is what turns humans into zombies in the Resident Evil series. Wesker sought to fire this virus into the atmosphere,
ensuring complete global penetrate, masturbate, castrate, saturation.
There we go.
The Ouroboros virus, when combined with the DNA of a compatible host, gives them more superhuman abilities. However, on others, it basically turns them into a walking mass of tentacles and flesh. Japan, everybody! However, when Sheva and Chris were able to sufficiently piss him off enough, he decided, screw it, and used the Ouroboros virus on himself. As a result, Wesker has even further enhanced durability and strength, though at a cost of speed. Possibly. He could also just be walking menacingly towards Sheva, so we don't know. We've seen earlier what the virus does to unworthy hosts, as shown Excelligion, where she was transformed into a giant mutant flower virus monster. Said monster took several hits from a satellite laser to go down, and that's for an unworthy. Either way, even if something is out of range of Wesker, his arm is also a giant tentacle rope that can turn into a flash and metal drill, smash apart giant stone pillars with ease, causes an Ouroboros tornado, shoot a wave of the virus, and grab objects from afar and pull them. Like a helicopter that has a pilot, 3 passengers that are fully equipped, and a bunch of weapons, including rocket launchers seemingly more powerful than the one's base Wesker tank, blowing up in his hand. Assuming this is a Sikorsky UH-60 Blackhawk helicopter, as well as the 2 RPG-7s, and the weight of all the people inside, which we have canon numbers of, and assuming that all of their other items are inside of some sort of hammer space, this comes to about 11,313 pounds, or 5.66 tons. Ouroboros Wesker is able to keep it from flying away and shake it madly with one arm tentacle thing. Unsurprisingly, it took quite a bit to finally finish him off for good. Yeah, spoiler, he dies. It took 2 of the RPG rockets blowing up in his face at once while submerged in lava and having been greatly weakened several times beforehand, including having the heart of Ouroboros been shot multiple times by Chris. In all likelihood, that's a generic video game weak spot, no less. Speaking of weaknesses,
The right to be a god. That right is now mine.
yeah, despite the fact that Wesker constantly claims he's a god, he's far from that. For one, he is extremely arrogant. He will often toy with opponents who he thinks are weaker than him and will not fight at 100%. Sure, he will take the gloves off once he actually starts taking his opponent seriously, but that's besides the point. As for actual weaknesses, the progenitor virus itself, while very powerful and one of the reasons he even has all the cool superpowers he has, also constantly fights for control of his mind. In order to fight this virus, he has to take a serum to fight off the virus's control. And this serum is so potent, it can actually be toxic if overdosed even slightly.
Sarah said that the amount administered has to be precise. So if he injects too much, it should act like a poison.
And there's the previously mentioned problem with seeing in the dark, because he absolutely refuses to take off his damn sunglasses unless he needs to. But on top of that is Ouroboros' issues. Supposedly, Ouroboros is weak to fire and heat. Yes, it's resilient enough that Wesker is still submerged in lava and was okay, But then there's the other problem. Due to the Ouroboros virus basically being progenitor virus 2.0, it also completely takes over his mind and makes him completely insane. Well, more insane than normal, to the point that he was obsessed with finally destroying Chris once and for all. And he's been beaten by Chris, Sheva, and Jill, as well as having his plans foiled by other heroes in the series like Leon. So now, with that out of the way, let's take a look at Wesker's stats. So now for the part where we see how he factors against other series. Another series with zombies, horrible diseases, and government conspiracies. Dead Rising. Yeah, put it simply, even base Wesker carves a bloody path through this series without even so much as a crack on his sunglasses. With the top tiers being small building level, with the most overpowered weapons, there is very little in this universe that can hit, let alone harm, especially when Ouroboros Wesker is taken into consideration. He's more than fast enough to dodge any and all projectiles heading his way and close the distance. And even if they do manage to get a hit on him, his durability and accelerated healing counter that pretty damn well. Also, it's very likely he's immune to the Amphilex Compressa Gigantis virus due to his own mutated physiology and resistance to decidedly more potent breakouts. Could those wasps even pierce his skin? Now, for the series, this guy apparently has seen one too many times, The Matrix. Yeah, we're really comparing him to this series. Simply put, only as Ouroboros Wesker, he's roughly on even grounds with the main cast during the first film. But everything goes to hell for him from the second movie onwards. Having much slower speed, attack power, and durability, in addition to the series' fairly large pool of hacks to choose from, ranging anywhere from potent telekinesis to technopathy, to reality warping, to even healing factors of their own. Granted, it's a bit more in Wesker's favor if the fight was in the real world, but that's such a level of blatant nerfing that it's not even remotely funny. Finally, more series that involve people becoming mutated zombie monsters, but this time it's in space! Dead Space, to be exact. Wesker at full power does decently well through this universe, typically being somewhat higher in power than the Necromorphs, and his experience in dealing with highly trained super soldiers can be very helpful here up against the likes of someone like Isaac Clarke. Still, the series has a fair amount of resources and hacks to keep him on his toes. So I can't say for absolutely certain that he solos, but it's not exactly an idiotic claim. At the same time, you might be able to say Isaac's various weapon mods and other assorted items may be enough to overcome or bypass his durability and healing factor and give him the win. And that's just about everything for Resident Evil's Big Bad. We know there are other feats he might scale to, such as Nemesis and that city block-sized explosion or anything with a Harry, but that's why we put his states at least, meaning plenty of room for his combat prowess to solidify. Speaking of combat, Star, whatever happened to that mission Wesker sent you on?
Greetings. This message is for Star and TNT. I have a mission for you. You must go and find William and kill him.
I tried to, but he said he'd fire me. Looking back, I don't know if he meant kicking me from Ze Pyromancers or literally setting me on fire. Or both. Probably both.
The end.